Oh, I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited about this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Chatter About the Chatter. Your host, myself, Cuddy Cudworth. I'm sure you're all fully well aware of that as you've been listening to the podcast. Now, we've not done phone for a while because I wanted to start the next series of the Chatter About the Chatter podcast. I wanted to get a big deal on the show. And we are talking practically Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going
to... That's right. Not Hollywood, but practically.
Practically Hollywood. Yeah. But for anyone that remembers, the second I met you, I was like, no, it can't be. And we're going to talk about it. We are going to deep dive about this. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce Tome Mctigue from the one and only Baywatch, ladies and gentlemen, Baywatch.
Does anybody even remember? I guess they remember Baywatch, but is anybody alive listening to this podcast that ever watched an episode of Baywatch? I mean, it's a little, it's most of it's petrified now. I think they're digging it out of caves and it's got dinosaur bones with it.
So for anyone that watches, if I've got a Samsung TV, and on when you turn on the Samsung TV channel listing comes up. And I don't know why, but it's stored on. There's a Baywatch channel in the UK. I don't know if that's Samsung around the world. There is a Baywatch TV channel which plays nothing but Baywatch reruns.
Wow. Do you have to subscribe to that, or is it just
UK?
Unbelievable.
So you are on my TV daily. Every time I turn on the TV. It's practically porn, to be honest with you. It really is.
Yeah, it's practically porn. Dude, shooting it was such an interesting lesson in humility, because you'd rehearse your lines and you'd figure out how you wanted to deliver this and where your mark was and everything. And, you'd figure, 2 or 3 takes, they'd go, that's great, and we got it, whatever. You'd go up, you'd do sort of you'd do it once and they'd go, great, cut, we got it. And then they'd spend about an hour and a half fluffing tits and, sputzing butt cracks and, making sure that part of the show is perfect. My lines didn't make any difference. Nobody cared.
I love it. So what character did you play again?
Harvey Miller, the fun-loving girl chasing lifeguard. Yeah. It was, dude, it was a fun experience. I'm glad I did it. It turned into some sort of a bizarre international cannot kill that thing juggernaut. But
how many seasons did you do, or how many series did you do?
I did 1 season. I only did season 2. The first season it was on, I think, NBC, and then NBC cut it from their schedule, and then they went syndicated. They were one of the very first shows to continue filming in syndication. And I came on that season and did that, season 2, and then they just didn't rehire the entire lifeguard staff, and then they brought on world-class tits in Pamela. So they got rid of one.
They got rid of one world-class tit. Bought quite a few more world-class tits.
They knew how to butter their bread. Yeah, they knew exactly what the butter was and where to find it. So that's what they did.
I just thought it was funny that when that episode came up, and I was like, I'm taking a picture. I've got to send it to Tom, because it was when you were stood on the stage with all those bikini ladies.
Well, I think, I have never, here's an interesting little bit of trivia. I have never seen myself on Baywatch. I've seen pictures that people send me, but I've never sat and watched an episode of Tome Mctigue on Baywatch. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff there that I don't remember, but I've never seen an episode of Baywatch, ever.
That's really not when you're on your own and a little bit quiet. You think maybe I'll just put Baywatch on because it's free.
No. and I don't know. I think what that does is it speaks volumes to the quality of my life. That I've got other things that seem to be more pressing than watching, a 25-year-old episode of me on Baywatch.
Is it 25 years ago since Baywatch?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, mid 90s, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, mid 90s.
Oh, that really just shows age, doesn't it? That really, really does. Because I mean, I was 3 when it was on TV, so I mean, it goes so quick, doesn't it?
I'm a little older. I'm a little older than you are,
Yeah.
but I'm so much better looking that.
And now, Tom, you are comedian extraordinaire because we've worked together on the ships.
Yeah.
And I used to always enjoy your show. I used to always enjoy your act, everything. And we also went to Hawaii together. We did. When did you sign on? Did you sign on in French Polynesia and you stayed with us till Hawaii, or did you sign on with us in Australia?
I might have. I think I signed on in Hawaii. I think
No, we signed off together in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just Hawaii. No, I signed on in somewhere in Polynesia because remember
right.
we did that baby shark thing in Bora Bora.
Yes, we did.
Was that Bora Bora?
Yep.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. I would love to go back there, except that it's such a huge day of travel. I live in Texas, so from here it's 4 hours to Los Angeles, and then about 5 hours to Hawaii, and then about 8 hours down to Bora Bora. But man, that was I had such a good time there. And then I remember doing the Hawaiian Islands, and that was pretty much where we parted company in Hawaii.
Yes, we did. I think I had the earlier flight. Oh no, you had the earlier flight out. I think you did. It was that was a phenomenal day because we got in a taxi and we went and did all the tourist places in. I'm trying to think of the island now. I'm trying to think of which island it was. Kauai.
I think.
Kauai. So look, you've done the rounds, Tom. You've been up and down, left and right, and that's what this show is about. It's about the chatter. It's the conversations that we have with ourselves and how we've got past them. So share your story, because I know you've got a phenomenal story from after Baywatch and the ups and downs that you've had in life, and to now living the life that you're living now, which is a beautiful, blessed life. But tell us about the story of Tom.
Post Hollywood.
Post Hollywood, yeah.
Well, I can't. I mean, my story is deeply stitched to my alcoholism. So that's sort of my. I mean, if there's any story to tell about change or redemption or victory over difficulties. So I guess in 2002, I was living in Los Angeles, and the career was getting slower and slower. I was still making a living, but I was having to hustle a lot harder for a lot fewer jobs. I mean, I'd gone 20 years in Los Angeles and really been fortunate enough to be employed almost constantly. I did hundreds and hundreds of television commercials, a lot of episodic TV, a couple of series, some small film work, but I was always working. And then in between those jobs, I was working in stand-up. And about 2002, everything just started getting really sticky. Nothing was flowing. Everything was harder and harder to come by. And I was drinking an awful lot. I'd go out at night to meet friends at like a comedy club, and I'd do a set, and I'd have a drink, and then I'd say, I gotta go. I gotta get up early in the morning or whatever, which I didn't. And then I would go to my neighborhood bar close to my house, so I didn't have to drive a long distance, and I'd just drink myself into a state, and that was night after night after night for several years. And and then in 2002, I had been married. I was married, but we were separated. And my wife, also an alcoholic, I guess, announced that she was going to move to Texas and she was taking my daughter. And my daughter at that point was about 5 years old. And my wife was an attorney. I didn't really have any legal recourse to keep her from moving. I could have litigated, but as I said, work was getting thinner and finances were getting tighter. And so she made that announcement, and for lack of a better word, my heart broke. I was just sort of, the final nail in the coffin. And I remember very, very clearly thinking, I'm gonna have to drink more until this pain goes away. And then juxtaposed with that, the very next thought was, how can you drink anymore? You're already drinking as much as you possibly can. And that was a real wake-up call for me. I mean, I knew that the way that my wife engaged with alcohol was not going to be beneficial for my daughter, and I knew the way that I was investing in alcohol and checking out wasn't going to be beneficial for my daughter. And I sort of committed to myself that even if I wasn't going to be a present father for my daughter, I would never, ever be unavailable to her as a result of checking out via being drugged or drunk or whatever. And so the next day I dragged myself into a 12-step meeting and stayed. And stayed. And I had no idea how, removing alcohol from my life was going to improve my broken heart, my broken finances, my broken family, but I believed that whatever it was that I was doing wasn't getting the job done. So I needed to try something else. So I quit drinking in March of 2002. And then my wife indeed moved to Texas, probably in 2003, I guess, something like that. And I was still doing a couple of jobs here and there, a couple of commercials here and there, a couple of episodics here and there. And then I would go out on the road and do ships or Vegas or wherever I was working. And then interspersed with that, once a month, I would go down to Texas and visit my daughter, try to be as present as I was able to, geographically and possible financially. And then in 2007, I got a phone call. I had just come back from Texas. I think I had come back on a Sunday, and this was a Monday, and the phone rang. And there was a noise on the phone that I can't replicate and I never want to hear again. And it was the voice of my wife's next door neighbor who was screaming in the phone. And my wife had attempted suicide. And I say attempted suicide. She set herself on fire, and her neighbor found her in the backyard and literally put her out. And I didn't know any of that when I got the phone call. I understood from the phone call that my wife had been injured, and I think the message was, you need to come to Texas now. And, I mean, when you're in a relationship with an alcoholic, crises are not uncommon.
Yeah.
But this seemed to be a bit more profound than, I didn't know the circumstances. I didn't know it was a attempt at self-destruction. I just knew that she had been burned, and I needed to come to Texas. So I got on a plane, the first flight out that I could, and I flew here. And once I got here, the pieces became kind of clear. Her family was very, they were doing a lot of enabling and, so it was like, oh no, she was lighting the barbecue and, something flared up and,
Right.
they're making a lot of excuses for it, but it became very clear the extent of her injuries were incredibly severe. Looking at charts, there is a, I don't know what they call it. You can figure out somebody's chances of mortality from a burn by adding the percentage of their body that was burned severely to their age, and that will give you their odds of mortality. And her odds of mortality from her injuries were 80 plus 50. What's that? 130. So her chances of surviving these injuries was her chance of dying from her injuries, 130%. So I knew that she wasn't ever going to recover from this, and so I stayed. My plan was to get my daughter through the school year and then move her back to Los Angeles with me, and then I would sort of pick up where I left off. And after staying here for 6 months or so, it just became apparent to me that the best course of action was not to do that, was to stay here and let my daughter be in contact with her friends and her teachers and her mother's family, and I would figure out how I was going to make a living, but I didn't know. I didn't really know. And so that's what I did. I think I thought at some point that I was going to move back to Los Angeles. I kept a home there. But it started feeling very schizophrenic to be in one place, but have a plan to be in another place at some point in the future. I couldn't really vest myself either place.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't made a choice. I had left all options on the table. And so I decided I was going to make that decision, and I sold the house in Los Angeles and just said I'm staying.
Yeah.
Staying in Texas. And so I did. And that was a really tough period of time for me, because
I would bet.
Over in the course of 24 hours, I went from being a guy with work history and a reputation and a career and neighbors and a home and a neighborhood and an identity and, financial security, relatively speaking. And in 24 hours, the home was gone, the neighbors were gone, the job was gone, the identity was gone, the geography was gone, the friends were gone. It was just an incredibly violent rug sort of being pulled out from under what was at that point my life.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the alcoholism early on because that's really my recovery from alcoholism has informed almost every major decision that I've made since then. And I remember, in the horrifying aftermath, it took my wife a couple of weeks to succumb to her injuries. Mm-hmm. And I remember in the aftermath of that, because I loved this woman. She was troubled and we were troubled as a couple, but she was somebody who I loved enough to be married to, and we had a child together. And I remember just feeling the horror of it all. And I called a friend of mine who's guided me through recovery. And I said, what in the world? I mean, if I'm assuming that God exists and that there is a God in the world overseeing all, what possible role could God have in this abject fucking horror?
I
And his response to me was very informative and very instructive. He said, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. But I can tell you that if you walk through this with as much grace as you can muster, and you don't choose to drink again because of it, on the other side of this, you will have an experience that will allow you to save people's lives. And you know, you'll meet other people in crisis, and you can, you know, they'll think, God, it's the end of the road for me. There's just no upside here. And you can say, hey, let me tell you a story. And I guarantee you, these are his words. I can guarantee you that something to that effect will come across your path down the road. So
that's amazing. And I know you've helped out quite a few guys with the troubles they've had.
Well, I think I've been lucky enough to have experienced the things that I've experienced, and I'm willing enough to share them. Oh, that's my dog scratching himself, if you can hear that. You know, that the way we walk through life as humans is by sharing some light on the path for people who are lost in the darkness. You know, for me, the supreme benefit of my sobriety is being able to help somebody else out.
Yeah.
You know, because there were all of those people when I needed the help that very selflessly showed me what they did and showed me how they did it and walked with me as I stumbled along and led me from where I was to where I am, you know. And I think that's how we, you know, it's the best day I have is when somebody says, can you help? You know, man, well, you know, and it's interesting, but you're talking about the chatter, and I'm assuming you're talking about the chatter in your head.
Absolutely.
Whenever I feel like I need help, it's not instinctive for me to ask for help. My go-to is, that's going to be an inconvenience, or that's stupid. Just buck up and do it yourself, or that's not that important. You know, nobody really wants to get that phone call. In my experience, that's not true. That's a lie that my ego makes up.
Yes.
The best days of my life are when I feel useful to another human being. So if the phone rings and somebody says, you might have the answer to this problem that I'm experiencing, can you help me? Jesus, it makes you feel incredibly valuable. It's so much better than $100. It's so much better than a job. It's so much better than a shiny car because it lasts. The reward payoff for being useful lasts so much longer than any, you know, external bauble that we could provide for ourselves, right? There's a study that was done, and I can't name the study. I don't know if it was a vast, big old study, but what they were trying to figure out was, can you buy happiness? Right? They took the premise, you know, people say you can't buy happiness, and they said, well, maybe let's test that theory. So they'd get people and they'd say, how happy are you? And they'd say, well, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm a 5. And they'd say, okay, well, here's $100. Go spend it on whatever you want and come on back and tell us, you know, if that altered your state of happiness. And these people would go out and they'd spend the $100 and they'd come back and they'd say, how happy are you? They go, I'm about a 5, you know. Didn't have any impact at all. But then they took a second group of people and they said, how happy are you? said, I don't know, maybe a 5. And they said, okay, well, here's $100. Go spend this. But there's one caveat. You can't spend it on yourself. You have to spend this money on somebody else. Do something for somebody else. And so they went off and they came back and they said, how happy are you? And they were like, man, I don't know, maybe like an 8, a 9, you know. It was a stark difference, right? When we interact in a positive way with our fellow man, whether that be buying them a gift out of the kindness of our heart, not looking for payback, or whether we just are simply an ear for them to vent to, or a shoulder for them to cry on, or a solution for maybe some darkness that they're experiencing that we might have an idea how they can find their way out of. Those are incredibly rewarding experiences that add value to my walk, my brief little stroll along this rocky globe in the middle of space. There's some value to me being able to make your walk a little easier, a little less troublesome, a little more accompanied, perhaps more gentle. So I guess anyway, getting back to I'm talking a lot, Cuddy. You're really not doing a very good job.
You know what? The reason I'm not talking, Tom, is because literally what you've just said is beautiful. It's practically poetry, Tom.
Well, thank you, brother. It comes from having my head in a grinder for figuring out how to keep my head out of a grinder. So
you've took, for what some people would absolutely break them, shatter them, put them down, and you turn that experience into a massive positive for not just you, but the others around you. And that is, I'll say thank you, Tom Mctigue.
Thank you, buddy. And it's all, I don't know how to say this out. I don't want to diminish it. I'm not being like falsely modest, right? But I think a lot of my solution has come out of my selfish desire to diminish my own pain. And so I ask the people around me, how do you diminish your pain? And almost invariably, the wise ones will tell me, stop looking at your pain, start looking at somebody else's pain. If I can distract myself from my pain
without using alcohol,
without using drugs and alcohol, by reaching out and trying to diminish your pain, magically, my pain diminishes, right? So now I live in Texas, right? And I'm a single full-time, not the weekend good time dad. I'm full-time dad to a 12-year-old girl who's been through her mother's suicide and all of the trauma that goes along with that. And I've done an okay job, geez, my daughter's, I love her to death. Did that experience wound her? Yes, it wounded her. And I think that she's still experiencing the echoes of that today. And to a large degree, I can't help anymore. I'm available to talk and I'm available for advice if she asks for it. But the journey that she's on, trying to mend whatever damage was wrought by that experience, is going to be her journey, But I've continued to maintain my sobriety and invest in my sobriety. And about 9 years ago, I was in a meeting and a girl came in and she was not having a good day. It was just really obvious that she was not having a good day. Very newly sober. And she shared, but I don't recall about what. I just knew that she was feeling really crunchy. And So I approached her after the meeting and I introduced myself and I shared a little bit of what I'd been through. Again, that's kind of how we just interact with each other. And I told her it was going to be okay and things were going to get better. Just, believe that, because I didn't have a dog in the fight. I was just, it's going to get better. And over the subsequent year, I saw her maybe once or twice just to nod at her across the rooms. But didn't have much interaction, didn't have another conversation with her that I remember. And about a year, maybe a little more than a year after that initial conversation, I got an email via Facebook. She'd found me on Facebook and sent me an email. And she said, I just wanted to say thank you. Because I'm sitting in my apartment. I've got my kids here. At the time that I met her, she was facing a lot of prison time and the loss of her children, and was broke and, no job, no prospects. She was in bad space. She said, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm sitting in an apartment. And it's furnished and I've got my kids back and I have a good job and life is looking up and I just feel so happy. And I wanted to reach out and say thank you, because the day that you met me in that meeting, my plan was to leave that meeting and commit suicide.
Oh.
Yeah. Kind of takes your breath away.
Does. Tom, you're breaking me in two here.
She said, whatever it was that you said to me saved my life. And it just took the wind out of me. It was such a beautiful letter, but it was also so humbling that by accident, and it's truly by accident, I helped her, and so we made arrangements I'd never met her really, and sat down and gotten to know her. We had coffee, and then a week later we had more coffee and maybe a meal. And a week after that, I introduced her to my daughter and we became friends, and I met her kids, and now we're married. We got married this summer. We've been together 8 years. But it's an example of, I don't know what my impact is on the world around me, but assuming that my negative impact is as strong as my positive impact if I'm walking around being negative versus walking around trying to be positive, then who knows what kind of damage I could wreak on the world around me. It's just appalling. But when you do what you think is the right thing for the right motives, really amazing ripples come out of that. I now get to be the stepdad to these 2 kids that I'm just massively in love with. This woman gets to be the mother figure for my daughter, who lost her mother at age 12, and they are very close. So it's like the pebble in the pond, right? You drop this pebble and these ripples go out and out and out and out and out. And I can't tell you how many other women my wife has helped, and those ripples go out, and then the ripples from those ripples go out. And it's just this thing of goodness that keeps giving, and that's not to say that, everybody's skipping through daisies on a daily basis, but when we stumble, if we can have the humility to pick up the phone and ask people for help, we make their day, and they very well may save our lives, and what a gift. We think of it like, oh, I can't pick up the phone and ask, that would be a burden. It's the exact opposite of a burden. It's a gift. You're gifting them with your humility and giving them a sense of usefulness and purpose that is unequaled in human experience. That's the good thing. Being useful, being, having a purpose. That's the good thing, man. And it isn't the purpose of earning a buck. It isn't the purpose of painting the wall. It isn't the purpose of, it isn't all this minutia and these distractions that we throw at ourselves. It's connecting with another human being. That's purpose. That's purpose. In its simplest form, the reason that I believe I exist is to love, not necessarily be loved, but my purpose is to love. And if I can carry that through to the best of my ability, then that's a good thing. I've done my job.
That I knew you were the right person to reach out for a podcast. I just knew it.
Yeah.
Tom, that was absolutely gorgeous, Tom.
Thank you, man.
I know we've been friends for such a long time, and I know I knew your story, but how you've gone through that tumultuous time, that horrible time, and you come out. It's beautiful, Tom. It's beautiful.
Thank you, man.
It's a story that needs to be heard.
Well, I've been really lucky, I've had really wise people in my sphere. Not the least of whom, my mom. My God, my mom was so just a brilliant, gentle, wise, and she was good. I remember really shortly, like maybe the summer, or maybe the next summer after my wife's death, I was at the lake, and then I was talking to somebody about it, and my mom overheard. And later that day, very gently, she pulled me aside. And this is something only somebody who loves you or somebody who's very close to you could possibly say. But she said, "Oh, honey," she said, "don't become the man whose wife committed suicide. You're so much more than that."
Wow.
And, I know, and people whose deal is their damage. They relive their damage, and that's the identity that they hold on to. That my husband left me, or that job, that got fired from that job, and I just descended, and it wasn't fair, and and they just relive these insults that they feel like they've experienced over and over and over and over in a continuous loop. And it's so tedious, and it's so unhelpful. And in many ways, it's just damning. They stay stuck in this eddy of, but I love the word resentment, because broken down, it's resendment. You just keep resending this thing over and over, and you're caught in this loop, and maybe I was doing that for a time, but to hear her say, "Don't fall into that trap, man. Don't become that. You're more than that. You're better than that. You're more useful than that."
That was a polite, tough love.
Oh yeah, my mom was big on tough love. I remember one time I called her a bitch, and she hit me so hard. I don't know what I was like 15 and just thought I was all full of piss. She wanted me to do something or was upset with me, and I said, "Ah, you bitch." And man, I didn't even have time to blink. She clocked me so fast, so hard. I was like, "Oh, Jesus, I just fucked with a badger." She was, she was everything and a bag of chips. It was great.
So how did you get back on stage as a comedian after all that? How? What was the driving force to get you back on the stage as a stand-up comedian after and write new material?
stand-up is really therapeutic in a lot
It is.
I don't necessarily have to tell you the truth in order to enjoy myself or effectively perform stand-up. So I don't go. I've never been on stage and copped to the fact that my wife committed suicide. I
Nope,
mean,
never once said
I
that.
don't. I don't know how you can go. Hey, my wife committed suicide, and here's the reality of it, and then make that. I've never figured out the puzzle of making that a joyful, hilarious experience. I can take other.
However, I
Go ahead.
did see Patton Oswalt do something like that. Patton
He's a better.
Oswalt's wife
He's a
died.
better. He's a better
No,
comedian.
he's not. He's not a better comedian. He's a different comedian. Tom Mctigue's going, oh, why would you mention it?
Well, I've never. I love performing.
Yeah.
When I perform, I have to be present. It doesn't work if I am not present. So if there are things in my presence that are bothering me, they have to be banished for an hour while I do my job. And in that way, it creates this little oasis, of peace. I might be just pulled up to my house. And if they knock on the door, you'll hear the dog. So, but I have to compartmentalize to a certain degree. I try to include as much darkness as possible in my show. I love it. I mean, I think that there's something incredibly hilarious about leading people down a dark path and then, pulling the joke out. But yeah, I find it to be really therapeutic for me anyway. It's nice to not. Hold on just a second. It's nice to not have to think about what's going on presently. I mean,
It's your meditation.
I have to think about the show and the delivery and the audience. And I was doing a show years ago for some corporation. I think it was New Balance tennis shoes. And I had done the show, and as they were introducing me, I was like, "Oh, this is just going to be awful." And it was this big ballroom full of people that they weren't particularly interested in stand up, and I was like, "This is going to be awful." And Tom Mctigue, this is going to be awful. Tom Mctigue. So I said, "Hey, everybody, how you doing?" And I started doing what I do, and they laughed. And instead of thinking, "Oh, hey, it isn't going to be awful," my next thought was, "This isn't going to last." And I kept plodding through the show, and they laughed at the appropriate times, and it all went fine. And I said, "Thank you, good night." And they applauded loudly, and I got off stage. And instead of thinking that was actually worked out well, my thought was, it didn't go well enough. Right. So every step along the way, I was defeating myself. Right.
Yep.
And I called a friend. I said, "How do I address this bizarre mental, booby trap that I'm laying for myself?" And he said, instead of going out there and looking for what you're going to get from them, he said, turn it into an opportunity to be of service to them. You're just going to go out and do the best that you can do, and how they receive it isn't any of your business. So I've found that to be really helpful too. Before I go on stage, every time now, it's part of my pre-show mantra. Before I go out on stage,
reframe. Yep.
It's sort of a prayer that I offer up to the universe. Let me make these people's days a little bit better. Let me stay on myself and just try to be present and do the best that I can do and serve them to the best of my ability. And you've seen shows that don't go well, and I've certainly had shows that don't go well. And rather than coming off stage now going, God, they didn't like me. Now
I've
I
worked
come
with
off
those
stage and I
comedians
go,
as
well,
well.
yeah, I mean, I come off stage and I just go, hey, I did the best I could, I did what I was contractually obligated to do, and however they receive it is not my business. It's just I got to stay out of those results. What I need
Yeah.
to focus on is preparation and the process.
Yeah.
But outlook versus outcome.
Oh, love that. Outlook versus, very nice. Very nice. That's reframing. That's such a powerful tool to use, is when you reframe something to the positive for you. Because I have seen comedians walk off the stage and, it was horrible, they didn't like me. And I'm like, I just the show, it was a phenomenal show. But then I've seen comedians walk off stage, and I'm not going to say whereabouts in the world it was, Australia. And one comedian was absolutely, he was drunk. I'm like, I've got to let him go out because we've got nothing else to fill. I've just realized he's turned up 2 minutes before showtime, absolutely steaming. And he's walked on stage. He's effed and blind at the family show, and he's walked off saying, oh my God, that was amazing. I was so good. I was like, no, we dragged you off because you couldn't get your words out. It was horrible. Oh my God. Bless.
Yeah.
Bless. So I've seen both sides of the coin on there. Tom, I have to say that I just got lost in your story of gratitude, the absolute torture you must have gone through, and how you are now. I've always adored you as a human being, not just a comedian. And it was genuinely an absolute pleasure every interaction we ever had, which is why we've stayed friends for such a long time. Plus, I've always been able to say, I know somebody from Baywatch, so it's been a win-win for me.
Yeah, well, I've always enjoyed your company, and Carol's a peach, and there's something really good. I just turned. I am now 62, right? And there's it's an interesting time of life because I get to see people who are 62 and lamenting it, and people who are 62 and just rolling with it. I mean, the option is I'm not here anymore, right? So I'm really enjoying this stage of my life, and I have noticed, and I don't know whether this is a function of the job that I've had for 40 years as an entertainer, or the station that I'm at in my life financially and domestically and whatever, but I don't have any ambition anymore. I've totally lost my ambition. There's nothing that I really want, that I'm really interested in just busting my ass to get, And that's not to say that I've gotten everything that I've wanted out of life, but I've gotten everything that I've wanted out of life. I've got a calm and stable and loving domestic situation. I've got
Beautiful.
enough money in the bank. And I've done everything that I wanted to do. I've done, I had this dream when I was 18 that I wanted to be an entertainer, and I wasn't quite sure what, incarnation that would take. At first, I wanted to be a drummer, and then I don't know. I became an actor whose primary skill set was selling shit on TV, and but I mean, I've gotten to do all these high profile things. I've met a lot of really interesting people.
Did you meet the Hoff?
Oh yeah, sure. I worked with the Hoff for a year.
Was Pamela Anderson on that series?
Never met her.
I appreciate your honesty. I don't think we can be friends anymore. I was hoping for
Okay.
you're my stepping stone to Pamela Anderson. That was how the show was supposed to work, but I should have done my research a little bit more, huh?
Chatter about so this is all a ruse, isn't it? It's a way for you to just motorboat Pamela Anderson. That's what this is all about, isn't it? Oh, honey, I did not see through this at all. Again, I'm the most gullible human being on the face of the. I cannot. I'm sorry. I'm such a. I just don't try to. Yeah, you got me. You got
That's
me. Good
hilarious.
luck with Pamela Anderson. I don't know if you've seen her lately, but that poor gal.
Now I will. Pammy's always will always be the one. I always have that because it's funny the conversation with my wife because it used to be Pamela Anderson. It was that was always the poster lady. And I was just watching an episode of Baywatch before coming on here to talk to you. So I'll do a bit of research, and I found the episode. And if you, no disrespect to Pammy or anybody else, but she did look a little bit rough even back in the day. I was like, you could see that, and you could see she wasn't going to age well. But I haven't seen her recently. I apologize, I haven't, because as my wife will attest, I'm very much more a redhead kind of a man these days. So,
Well, lucky Carol.
yeah,
Lucky Carol. Yeah, no, we all of us age, right? I mean, it's a joke with me now on stage that I can just say literally, and I'm not making this up. I can say on stage, I used to be on Baywatch, and it gets a laugh. People look at me like, "What happened?" I'm like, "What happened? I don't know. Wind, rain, snow, time." Takes its toll, but I'm really man, I'm at a comfortable spot in my life, and as long as I can maintain my health and do what I can for my family and my friends, man, I'm good.
you hit the nail on the head. Is that you found purpose and calm, and that is two things that many people don't have in their life. And if you can find just one of them, purpose being one, but calm. And that's the chatter about the chatter is the loudness of our thoughts, those conversations that we have. And if you can find calm like you found calm, that's beautiful, Tom. Beautiful.
Well, and these are just lessons that I've learned. The big way to find calm for me is acceptance. When I'm not in alignment with what is, oh, dude, I'm screwed because it is. There isn't anything I can do to change it. I've got very little sway over the world around me. I might have some control over the 8 inches behind the tip of my nose, but that's questionable at best, And so if I can, if something's going on in the world, and I can just say, okay, now what? As opposed to that's not fair. And that can't be, and I've got to fix that. And it's like so much of I can't fix. What I can do is I can be, if there's a crisis, I can be calm. I can be the guy that people go, ah, and I can say, hey, I get it, man. It's okay. Come here, But beyond that, what can I do?
No, I'm gonna ask you one question though, Tom. Knowing you found purpose and calm, when you get that person, you find that person who keeps repeating the story and won't let the story go. Now, your mum came to you and said those beautiful words, don't be the man that's lost his wife to suicide. Beautiful, powerful. However, what do you say anything when you meet that person that just will not let that story go? Or do you just have to cross the other path?
I think as soon as I recognize that they're locked in that pattern, I turn my attention to the man that would be helped by me. There are people who are locked in a pattern of behavior that is comfortable for them. I've met men and women for whom crisis is comfort. If there isn't something bad going on in their life, man, they'll find something bad going on in their life and they'll make it bad.
You're not wrong.
And I think those people are hard to recognize out of the gate, right? Out of the gate, we're like, oh no, this person's in crisis. If I can help or in any way, I'll avail myself to them. But then as the crises continue to either escalate or repeat, or it's the same conversation over and over and over again, I'm just like, oh, okay, I get it. And I just step off, and they'll find somebody else to validate their, their view of the world. But I can't I can't fix somebody that's locked in that kind of loop.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. No, it's honest as well. It's frank. It's the hard, because I think we all have that tendency to want to help. I'm a helper, always have been. Sometimes I've helped in the wrong places. I hold my hands up to that one. Not help. I've put in help when people have said, "Well, I can't ask for your help." Totally understand. But I suppose when you have that empathy and you see the turmoil that people that go through that don't realize they're going through the turmoil a lot of the time, it is hard to walk away. And I definitely speak from experience on that one. But you do have to walk away. You're 100% right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we don't walk away to a large extent in those circumstances, we're doing a disservice to the individual. We're being a part of their little drama. We're the audience to their drama. And as long as we're a willing, eager, we want to hear all the, then they've got somebody to perform their tragedy for. And if I remove myself from the audience of that, they probably won't quit performing their tragedy, but they'll quit wasting my time in the process.
Tom. Profound, Tom. Profound.
I'm an incredibly profound guy. My talents were wasted on Baywatch. Wasted. You'd be far better off watching the film Boyhood. I was better.
You were in Boyhood as well. You're in the movie Boyhood, and Boyhood got Oscars, did it not?
It did. And
Did you?
I was probably the best thing in the movie. Again, totally unrecognized. And I've accepted that.
Acceptance. Now you did mention, and I know we're going to start wrapping up shortly because I'm sure you've got a day to go and have. This has gone way over time, but you mentioned alignment to values, which is true, 100%. A lot of people, if you're listening to this now and what is alignment to your values? Find out what your values are. If you're not living to what matters to you and the values, you will genuinely find yourself in anxiety or depression. It's that inner turmoil. Find out what your values are. It's a powerful thing, and you did that a long time ago. That was beautiful.
I think I've been really lucky. I've been lucky to have mentors along the way and gentle individuals who have walked the path and just gently, put their hand on my elbow and kept me from stumbling as I walked along.
And that's a positive mindset. Exactly what you've said there. That with everything that's going on, you've said I've been lucky.
I think,
I mean,
some of it is certainly luck. A lot of it is certainly luck, and I think some of it is a willingness to recognize that me showing you my soft underbelly is an opportunity for you to show me your soft underbelly. And when both of us can be vulnerable and humble with each other, that gives us a lot more to talk about than for me to say, "Hey, I'm doing great. Everything's fine. I'm fine. Hey, thanks for asking." Yeah. I don't have anything to offer other than my humanity and my failures and my victories over my challenges. That's a lot. That's something everybody can bring to the table, because as you said early in the podcast, everybody has stuff they're going through.
Yeah.
But as long as you just go, "Hey, that's my thing. I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to ask for help. I'm going to tell everybody I'm okay." You disavail yourself to the possibility of being able to change for the better.
Beautiful. Tom, you've shared more than I ever expected. You've shared tragedy, you've shared wisdom, you've shared poetry and words I've never heard before.
Ah, honey.
And I mean that, Tom.
You're a nice man. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Tom Mctigue, everybody, on another episode of Chatter About the Chatter. Tom, you are not only a Baywatch legend, you are a movie Hollywood Boyhood superstar. But more importantly, and I think Carol would attest to this, is you are a friend. And
Thank you,
that's more important.
My love to your wife.
Absolutely. Any chance, while I'm wrapping up, any chance of the Pamela Anderson phone number?
No, I'll send it to you in a DM.
Cheers.
For sure.
Cheers in the DMs. Thank you so much. Stay exactly where you are because we are going to wrap up after. But thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tune in for another episode of Chatter About the Chatter. As always, big love from Cuddy. Thank you very much to Tom Mctigue, the legend, not the legend, but the legend that is Tom Mctigue. Big love from Cuddy. Thank you very much.